The first drawing, with a smudge of black and a child's proud scribble of eyes. Lily showed it to Mara like a triumph, crayon still clinging to the small crescents of his fingers, hair a halo of hurried strokes. "He likes the moon," Lily said, as if the man had a preference for moons. Mara laughed, the ordinary laugh of a mother who reads meanings into toys and doodles. The second drawing, a week later, had a collar and a stiff shoulder, more careful lines that made the shape of a jaw. The third was careful enough to make Mara's stomach drop, a narrow face carved out of shadow, a mouth that sat like a cut, and hands, too long, too precise, folded over a knee. In the margin, Lily had drawn a window with a clock. The clock's hands were at a time Mara recognized because she lived it for months. The hour between sleep and wake, when the house smelled like nothing and everything at once. Mara told herself it was imagination. Children trace monsters from cartoons, from nightmares, from borrowed fears. She told herself it until the night she saw him standing across the street beneath the sodium light, a darker block of quiet where the shadows should have been. Shoulders hunched as if folded around a body she could not see. She froze, and the world kept moving. Dogs, cars, a neighbor rounding the corner with a stroller. And when she blinked, he was gone. The next morning, Lily handed her a new page. The man, closer now, and the clock at the same hour. Mara's laugh caught in her throat. Mara had never believed in signs. She believed in logic, in the clean arithmetic of bills and lunchboxes and appointments. She believed in the way the day could be measured by the small rituals that kept grief soft and distant. But drawings are stubborn evidence, and the eyes that children make seem to hold more than graphite. The man in Lily's pictures was patient and exact. He was always at the edge of a room, always in the dark of a picture, always looking sideways like someone waiting for permission to step forward. Mara thought, for the first time, that some things in childhood are not invented, but returned. Mara kept the drawings in the kitchen drawer with the takeout menus and the unread letter from the insurance company, as if placing them among the mundane would strip them of danger. Sometimes when she opened the drawer for a pen or a receipt, she would see the black face and feel the sudden lift of breath from her lungs, as if someone had stood on her chest and released her only when she noticed. Lily's teacher called once, softly, concerned about the repetition and the detail. "Children repeat things," the teacher said. "It helps them process." Mara agreed, thanked her and hung up and told her husband, David, that art was how kids learn about the world. David smiled, bowed his head into a sea of emails and said, "Maybe he's just drawing a hero." At night, Mara would find Lily hunched at the small easel by the living room window, a bend of hair at the neck, the crayon moving with intent. The man in the drawings acquired objects, a hat the size of a dinner plate, a streak of white down one cheek like a smell that had been remembered wrong. Lily named him Mr. Knight, and the way she said the name was casual, a child's shorthand for a recurring dream. When Mara asked where Mr. Knight came from, Lily shrugged and said, "He stands in the window." Mara would tell herself stories. The neighbor boy who had been obsessed with superheroes, the television program Lily had watched at a friend's house. But then she would see the clock drawn into the corner of the page, and she would remember the man beneath the sodium light and the way the clock on Lily's very first drawing had matched the hour when everything felt thin and edges bled into one another. Sleep became brittle negotiation. Mara woke at odd hours, the house a hollowed place where each sound suggested presence. Once she walked past Lily's room and the door was open and the nightlight painted the floor the color of spilled milk. On the windowsill there was frost, thinned from the inside, a lace of breath, and on the frosted glass someone had left a smear, like the outline of a hand, but more like a pressure and absence. Mara pressed her palm to the glass and felt the cold without the imprint of fingertips. She shut the window and woke David because she could not hold the shape of it inside her. He rolled over, sleep pulling the corners of his eyes shut like curtains. "Moth," he muttered, "just a moth." Mara began to keep a journal, tiny factual entries, like a woman taking inventory of her life in case the house needed to be returned to a stranger. 6:12 a.m., Lily drawing. 12 o'clock p.m., Lily draws window, clock. 11:47 p.m., saw a man across street. The journal was a ledger of unease that she read like a map of failing things. She went to the pediatrician's office and sat in the beige chairs with the plastic fish tank and told the nurse everything. The nurse smiled the practiced smile of someone who had heard 1,000 parental fears. "Children repeat things," she said. "It helps them process." Mara agreed, thanked her, and hung up and told her husband David that art was how kids learn about the world. David smiled, bowed his head into a sea of emails, and said, "Maybe he's just drawing a hero." At night, Mara would find Lily hunched at the small easel by the living room window, a bend of hair at the neck, the crayon moving with intent. The man in the drawings acquired objects: a hat the size of a dinner plate, a streak of white down one cheek like a smell that had been remembered wrong. Lily named him Mr. Knight, and the way she said the name was casual, a child's shorthand for a recurring dream. When Mara asked where Mr. Knight came from, Lily shrugged and said, "He stands in the window." Mara would tell herself stories: the neighbor boy who had been obsessed with superheroes, the television program Lily had watched at a friend's house. But then she would see the clock drawn into the corner of the page, and she would remember the man beneath the sodium light and the way the clock on Lily's very first drawing had matched the hour when everything felt thin and edges bled into one another. At night, Mara sometimes returned to the chair and tried to imagine the house without the man's patient gravity. She tried to imagine Lily's future unmarred by the shadow at the margin of her child's sketches. She tried to teach herself a vocabulary for denial, distraction, busy work, laughter. But there are things that persist like stains, and sometimes the only way to live with a stain is to mark it as part of the cloth. The last drawing Lily made, the one she slipped quietly onto the kitchen table and left like an offering, showed a house with a light on and a small person inside. The figure at the window was a thin smudge of charcoal, the clock's hands positioned finally at a different hour. Underneath, in the child's precise hand, was one more sentence: "He will sit until you stop drawing the chair." Mara held the page until the paper warmed with her palms and felt the ache of decision tighten into something like resolve. Outside, the town moved with its small routines: garbage trucks, children's laughter, dogs pacing their fences. Inside, the chair sat where she had left it, an ordinary arm of fabric in spring. She thought of the man as something that could be negotiated with rules and boundaries. She thought of letting go as an act of protection, and of the terrible thinness of the line between seeing and creating. That night, Mara took the drawings and one by one placed them into a box, each fold a little lock. She slid the lid closed and breathed. Whether the man was gone or merely paused was a question she could not answer. Whether she had seen him because he existed or because her daughter had called him into being was a different, crueler question, one that lived in the small, permanent orbit of the family's days. When Lily woke in the morning, there was a new page on the table. It was blank but for a single circle in one corner, the black ring the child had drawn before, and the faintest impression of fingers where a hand had been lifted away. Mara looked at the circle and at the chair, and understood with the slow, cold clarity of a woman who had learned the grammar of impossible things, that some presences did not demand entry so much as notice. She put her hand over Lily's on the page, feeling the heat of her child's skin, and for a moment the room seemed full of things that might belong either to memory or to promise. Then they both went to the window and watched the street, counting the seconds with the patience of people who know that clocks keep time whether or not anyone looks.